Good morning and welcome to another great session, I hope, with Michael, Kate and Sally talking about anything to do with leadership and organisations, but in particular, I guess, what we're observing with organisations at the moment. So it's a beautiful Friday morning. The sun is absolutely shining in Cardiff, where I am. How's the world with you this morning, Sally?
Oh, it's lovely. It's sunny here again, as it should be in July, I think.
Yes. And Kate in the beautiful Brecon Beacon,
Yes.
how are you?
Yeah. Absolutely stunning, and I'm quite distracted with my new garden chair outside.
Okay.
And my list here right in front of me.
We'll try to keep you undistracted for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the things that's happened to all of us over the last week or so is we've been putting closure and an end to programs and relationships that we've had going for a long time. I've just closed down a program that's run for about the last 18 months. Sally, I know you've had something similar, and the same with you, Kate. So Sally, for you, what's the last couple of weeks been like, and in particular this area of closing a program down?
Yeah, well, this week in particular, I closed two actually leadership development programs that I've been working on with a client, and there was just a reflection for me that it was such a lovely opportunity to come to the end of something, but take the time as a group to pause and reflect. And in both these cases, I just thought the organisations have been so brave, because we had been talking about doing leadership development programs in January 2020. We were getting ready to run them. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And the questions that both organisations asked is, should we carry on now? Because we're in the middle of a crisis. And both of them were really brave enough to say, let's give it a go. So I've been running these leadership development programs over the last year and got really close to the leaders. And it has been just such a privilege. But the best bit for me is coming to the end and actually encouraging everybody that's been a part of those programs to really reflect on the impact that that program has had. And it has been a privilege to support leaders, not just through the program of leadership, knowledge and learning and skill building, but actually to support them through a major crisis as well during that period. Really sad for me to come to what I think is the end, but it isn't the end, because what was really, really lovely was to listen to their reflections about the impact that that learning has had, and that actually the difference that it's made to them. And in both organisations, they have come through this really challenging year stronger as a team as a result of coming together and spending that time together, learning together, reflecting together, growing together. It's really increased their trust. And I just think what phenomenal decision to take to carry on with leadership development at this time. And both organisations said it was the right thing to do. So whilst I'm a little bit sad about what's happened, I actually think it's great, because those leaders now are going forward, ready for whatever is going to face them.
And what's interesting from my perspective, what I've had over the last week is closing a program that would have originally been about 12 months, but because of COVID, we elongated it, and it ended up just over the 18 months. This week, listening to their reflections and their presentation of their reflections, the thing that grabbed me was that how well they coped. During the whole program, I kept thinking, gosh, are they coping? Is it okay? Are they surviving? But actually, they coped incredibly well and produced phenomenal interventions in their own organization, but also had immense personal learning. And at least 50% of the people had very challenging personal years, but coped with that. They coped, and if the program hadn't existed, the organization would not have coped as well, because I think it created that team, it created that support. And so many of the participants talked about the safety that existed on the training course for them to share and to talk and be vulnerable. It was a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
It got me thinking, I guess, as to how well organizations are reflecting on what they've learned. Because if it's had that impact on us, and that sense of, gosh, they really are good and they really did produce brilliant things, how are organizations taking the opportunity to reflect and to learn?
Yeah.
Kate, what's your experience been like then?
Yeah, and we often come back to this question, don't we, about how do we stop and look at where we've come from and where we've got to. And I'm thinking about my coaching relationships that have been fairly intense, as similar to you in terms of supporting people through the pandemic. And some of them have come to an end in the last few weeks. And I always find that quite hard, because those closures are more difficult in a way, because they're much more personal relationships that you develop with your clients. And so it's really helpful to look at how far have people come and what will they need to replace the coaching relationship going forward, because they're not going to have that space, that hour and a half every 4 or 5 weeks to reflect on how they're doing, what they need to do next. So what will they do to replace what we've been doing together?
That's such an interesting observation that I've seen so many times with coaching clients and on programs. What replaces this space where I reflect? What replaces this space where I learn and grow? Really interesting question.
Yeah, so we've been talking about peer coaching in one organisation I'm working with, so that they can support each other and reflect together.
Yeah, I'm actually working with a couple of organisations in the education space in relation to peer coaching, and certainly I know lots of organisations are really starting to think about the potential benefits of that. You know, from my own experience as a leader, I think it works really, really well. The challenge is creating that safe space, though, that trust, isn't it? You know, you can't just put two people together and say coach each other. They really need to have developed that safety and that trust as well, culturally, in organisations at the same time.
Yeah.
Interesting. One of the participants on the program asked me, when did I know that we had created safe space? And I said, really difficult, but I knew when we started the program in December 2019 that we clearly hadn't created it on the first day, and then we were suddenly in the pandemic, and I knew we hadn't created. But there was some period around June or July where I went, I think we're okay now. I think we've got it, and I must try to reflect and think about what were the indicators that that safe space existed. And clearly, what I know what we did to get there, but what were the indicators that people felt it was okay? And of course, it's different for everybody. Some people took a long time to be comfortable in that space, and some people were much earlier adapters of it. But that's life, isn't it? We always have this wonderful curve.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people put that down to personality, don't they?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I had that experience yesterday, in fact, working with a new team. So starting something new as opposed to ending something like you've been talking of. And that whole sense of creating a space for people that was facilitated with opportunities for them each to contribute and be listened to, which was very different to their normal team meetings. So that having that structure really helped them feel safe, and people commented on exactly that. And that if additional team members were to join, how would that affect the safety of the group, and what would help?
I always say one of the big measures of a successful team is its ability to bring on new people, and not to create cliques and not to create an in and an outer team. It's that measure of a great team is the ability to bring new people on. That sounds like a great place to stop, I think. Have a brilliant week. I hope you've enjoyed listening to our podcast, our video cast this morning, and we'll catch up very soon. Please comment in the comments as you have been doing, or send us emails as a lot of you do as well. So take care, have a great time, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you very much.